All right, boys, we've got an interesting one this week. We're checking out ExoPrimal. We're playing this over on Xbox. It's actually free to play if you have Game Pass Ultimate, which is pretty sweet. So we got pretty lucky to be able to jump in and check this one out. This is an exosuit dinosaur shooter. This one is interesting. It's PvPvE. It can be strictly PvE if you want it to be, depending on what your play style's like. But boys, there's a few issues here. And honestly, after the visuals and some of the audio in this game, and that stuff that kind of stood out to me right away, I really like the way this game looked. Capcom's done a really good job at kind of just delivering us something that looks really nice.
Yeah.
But that might be where it ends, at least for me. I want to know what you guys think jumping into Exoprimal. Scott, what were your thoughts on this one?
Well, I thought, similar to you, I thought, how do I describe this even? It's kind of just hordes and hordes and waves of enemy dinosaurs crashing. It reminds me a lot of Left 4 Dead, but that's also where the Left 4 Dead comparison ends. That game has an incredible storyline, and unfortunately, this one seems to beat you over the head with it every load screen, and there are several, so that was unfortunate. But I agree, the look of everything looks new, fresh, and kind of polished, but when it comes to spawning enemies into the world, it kind of just dumps them all out of a big black hole looking thing in the sky. I feel like that was the weak point. Otherwise, I would agree it looks really good. But we get into the kind of the gameplay loop, and that's where for the first time I've ever thought of this. Maybe you do want to play this PvE, actually. But Drew, we've had some nice fights online in the last several days, and what do you think about that? It was getting a little frustrating.
Well, yeah, it's the matchmaking is horrible right off the hop, right? Like we were pretty early in, and then we were up against people that were very high level, been doing this for a long time. And as you progress, you're able to unlock different abilities, things like that for your exosuit. Makes a ton of sense, right? But then we should be equally matched in that cadence, because when they have different powers and abilities that are way above ours, it's hard to compete with that. And we struggled with that early on, right? Even within the first hour, though, of my playtime, I'm like, dude, I'm bored. Like, this is just rinse, repeat, the same thing over and over. And like you say, Scott, it's the PvP side you kind of want to really dive into. There is the PvE side as well, but the idea and the concept is you basically go through all these hordes of dinosaurs. This is funny. Instead of hordes of zombies, they're hordes of dinosaurs. But either way, you mow them down, you just kind of plow through all of them, then you move on to the next one, and then you wrap up in the end where you have to, like, move a cube to an end zone, and that's how you kind of, I'm like, yo, this is like Overwatch. Like, what is there's a combination of this game and a little bit of that game, and then just kind of meshed in. Like, we'll see if this works. And honestly, at the end of the day, I don't think it really worked all that well. I think people are going to jump in because it on Game Pass, I think is going to help save this game a little bit. But if Leslie introduce a lot quicker than just letting this run, if they let this go for 6 months and don't introduce anything else, this game is dead. I don't even care if it's on Game Pass. This game is dead. Right now, we're jumping in. We're going to play with our buddies. We'll play for, I'd say, a weekend. We might last a week, and then we out, right? Like, that's just kind of like, this is over and over and over. And I just, that first hour, I'm like, what else are we going to do? We're going to go play something else. That's what it came down to, right? I thought the exosuits were cool. And they gave us a variety as well. I was actually kind of shocked to go in there and go, hey, you actually have quite a few in here already. I hope you continue to build off this, Capcom, and introduce more of these exosuits, because that's really kind of the highlight and the standout. I was already customizing mine. You know, I'm the big Kruger guy. I'm the tank, and I just like to go in there, and he's got this thing that homing missiles. So those, when the dinosaurs come in and they're flying, I'm like, I got those covered. But you can only do this for so long until you're like, man, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of being bored, and I just want something else.
Well, guys, the reason we're bored is because there's one game mode, and I don't understand how you can release a game that's supposed to be an online kind of PvP shooter to a degree and only have one game mode. And then you expect us to play that same game mode to advance ourselves through the story, because basically you have to play a match and then you'll get a cutscene through the story. The story is
cheesy.
Not great.
Dude, it's cheese.
The characters are cheesy. I think the cutscenes look good, but other than the visual aspect of it, it's just, I don't know. It's not really what's going to hold you in this game. It's not what's driving this game forward. And it's the unfortunate part because it seems to be a very large part of the early onset of this game. You have to get through all these matches to finish the story, and then you're kind of left to your own devices. Hopefully, as you get through, you're going to get into the Neosaurs, which are, are more advanced dinosaurs with more kind of abilities like fire and things like that you're going to have to deal with down the road. But at the same time, it's just not enough. If you're going to make me deal with the same thing with harder dinosaurs in the same game mode against the same types of players all the time, and if it's mismatched the way it's been, I mean, again, how is the lifespan of this game going to go? They have to come out with content. Yes, there's a battle pass that you can work your way through, and there's a ton of microtransactions to get different types of skins and things on your exosuits, which I can appreciate. There's been a lot of work put into that. And like you said, Drew, the exosuits are the highlight here. I like the fact that you've got the assault, the tanks, and the support, and each suit has its own style of abilities that really lets you kind of tailor the gameplay to how you want to play it. But when you're only playing in one game mode, it's the same thing every time. And that's the biggest disappointment here for me.
Corey, you touched on the story, and dude, it is one of the cheesiest things we've played this year, right? It is just over the top. AI is basically set up this system where you can go in and then fight these dinosaurs over and over again. Will they fine-tune the exosuit? But it's set up that you fail every time, more or less, right? So it keeps you coming back in, and then you get into the story. Well, you're not granted every time you finish the round to get a piece of story content, which is kind of like, man, I just want to find out a little bit about the story and kind of get on with it and then move in. But then there's this whole other side of it too. If you go into the data side, you can analyze, and it comes up with this wheel, and you're able to select little bits of information that tells you more about the backstory, which I thought was cool. But when you're playing with your buddies, the last thing you're going to do is go into this little side here so you can hear what's going on, because everybody's chirping in your ears and you're not going to hear anything anyways. So I'm like, I'll just do this on my own at some point later. It is there, but yeah, it is this whole premise of you're kind of in this alternate reality and you're fighting off all these dinosaurs. Well, this AI, this super AI is trying to take over things and this, that, and the other. And it's just, I mean, the characters are cheesy. Our character, again, doesn't say a word. Why? I don't know why our character can't speak. It's just like, why? Everybody else is talking, and we just sit there. And the character creator is so empty. That it was like bare bones, barely any thought put into this. I jumped in my first match. There was 3 characters, all look the same. I'm like, come on. The options there are so minimal. Man, the character creator is something I like to hone in on. I'm there for hours, right? And I'm constantly upgrading or updating and changing this and changing that. But if I can go in there and fine tune and create a character that makes me feel like it's my character, then I'm a lot more invested. But when you give me half a dozen options, I'm not any more invested than the next person and the next person, because when the score comes up, there's that character that looks like my character, that looks like my character, and that one. And then let's talk about the load screens for a second, because it takes you 3 minutes to get into a match. I can't believe this. On the Series X, here we are on the Xbox Series X, all of us. And this is the longest load time in a game I've played this year.
All right, fellas, we're going to let Drew take a bit of a breather here, because that one, well, that got a little emotional. But honestly, our time with ExoPrimal has been mixed and not necessarily in the best of ways. And unfortunately for me, if I've got to score this one, guys, I'm going to give it a 5.5. I feel like visually, the graphics, the audio were done awesome in this game, and it makes me want to jump in and play. But then as soon as I jumped in, I'm left with this kind of feels like contentless game where I'm not getting enough here. And I understand once you get past the story, there's going to be a few things here that are just going to maybe give you a little more life in this game, but some people aren't even going to make it there. So this one's going to be a 5.5 for me. Scott, what are you giving it?
I think that's fair. I'm with a 5, just slightly under, because of disappointment generally. I think this game is mechanically sound. Everything seems to be okay, but there are missing sections that could be delved into a lot deeper. I really question the life cycle of the game, because I want to get in, I want to get invested, but it feels like I'm just swimming uphill, and it just doesn't seem so nice to me. I think the team combat is something that will keep a little bit of legs underneath this game, but if they don't really support some of that PvP, I don't see this lasting very long.
No, which is fair. I kind of agree with you both, actually. I'm there with a 5 as well. Kind of thought about maybe a little bit lower, but at the end of the day, when I was playing last night, kind of like, oh, maybe it was just one more round, right? And it kind of a little bit, I'm like, all right, but it is so empty, so bare bones with a lot of it, and just the one game mode over and over and over just won't make the game have any longevity in the end, and that's a big concern.